Well, I want to thank everyone at Software Defined Talk for coming to this special all hands meeting. Now, as I'm sure you've read, you've heard, we have an announcement of an intention to be acquired by Oracle, of course. You know, it sounds like I don't want to comment on it, but maybe the TikTok acquisition didn't go well. I still want to get into social media. But anyways, let's not discuss that. Now, I know some of you haven't been through an acquisition before. So first of all, I want to thank the team that's been working on it. They've been working on this a long time. Lots of hard work, lots of charts. You might have seen some of those charts. Maybe you've been wondering why we've been asking you to tell us what you do and kind of send us updates. Get an idea. We're a very big company here, very hierarchical. Can be hard to keep track of things, but it's all been for that. Now, the first thing that I want to emphasize is that it's going to take a long time for this acquisition to go through. We don't know how long. I think IBM finally bought HashiCorp. That took about 10 months. Could be shorter, longer. I'm not really sure. But the most important thing is we've got to just keep doing what we're doing. It's got to be business as usual. We've got a big quarter coming up. We got to close that out. Just don't worry about it. Just keep with the great work. Also, until the acquisition closes, we can definitely not talk about anything we will do post-acquisition. There can be no strategizing about that, no discussion. It's probably not legal. So all these meetings we're going to start having are definitely not about what we're going to be doing if the acquisition goes through. That's not a discussion that's ever going to come up. We're just, once we actually sign the paper, miraculously, we're going to have about 200 pages of what we're going to do post-acquisition prepared and ready to go that we did not think about beforehand. Now, finally, I think I want to emphasize again, it's all business as usual. Just keep up the good work, and we'll see what happens. Now, with that, I think we're going to end the webinar.
Coté, just before you go, I've been fielding a few employee questions.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll turn that feature on. Please ask the questions in the Q&A and not the chat.
Yeah. So first question comes from Brett in Chicago. Brett is wondering if this will impact his vacation he has planned in May. He's going to the Caribbean with his family and is concerned that would like to know whether or not the acquisition and his healthcare benefits will be available when he's vacationing slightly outside the country. Could you comment on that?
Great question. And maybe we should update the FAQ to add that to it. I think we don't really know at this point. There's not enough information to know. But once we do know, we probably won't tell you.
What about also getting another one here from Michael from Alabama? He says he has worked here for 250 years and has never been given a promotion and is curious if you could talk through the promotion cycle and when he will be getting a promotion. And also, Coté, I don't know if you know, inflation has quite literally changed over the past few years. Will we be getting cost of living raises? I actually see some other people liking this question. Could you comment on that?
I see that someone listened to this past Sunday's Cloudcast episode where we're doing a case study of usually the questions you get in an all-hand town hall meeting don't have anything to do with what the spokesperson wants to talk about. But that's fine. I'm great. There are no wrong questions except the ones I don't like. And I think maybe once, if the acquisition goes through, there is going to probably be some kind of rationalization about job levels and bans and things like that. Now, with that, I really do need to go. There's a meeting I have to attend where I'm definitely not talking about what we're going to do post-acquisition.
Well, finally, I guess Coté went on this. I just wanted to let you know this isn't a question. This comes from Matt in Sydney. He just wants to say that, man, thinks it's great for the company. He's like, this is going to be a ton of synergy going forward. He personally believes this was the right decision. He's been thinking all along how smart management was to actually make such a great decision and is excited to go forward and really, if you will, bring together the powers of two great corporations going forward. So I just wanted to tell everyone how great you personally are at doing acquisitions. So thank you, Matt, as we close out the webinar. And as Coté said, we won't be taking any more questions. And of course, email us anytime and we'll be sure to never read those emails nor respond to them. Thank you.
Well, Exciting times here at Software Defined Talk. I think I think finally we can unveil Project Synergy was a success, and we'll be switching over to like I said, we can't really talk about it until the deal has gone through, but there should be a good cultural match, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, business as usual.
Yeah. So so I guess that means I'm gonna have a slight change in employers. It was announced this week that Wiz is getting acquired by Google. I happen to work at Wiz, so I'll just keep out of the news at this point.
Well, we can't. Can we? Have we all agreed that we can officially call this acquisition G-Wiz? Has that been at least been decided amongst the social
I'm here
elites?
For it. I'm here for it.
The social media. I don't know. So I guess we could just give like a quick take on it. I mean, Coté, obviously, Matt, I'm sure you can't comment in any great length. It's like, well, one, it's a huge acquisition. It's Google's largest acquisition at 32 billion, I think it is what it all came in at. So that's pretty impressive. I don't know, Coté, you've been on the other side of this. I guess what's happening now that it's been announced, and if you will, it's moving forward. What will be, and we'll say that the all hands meetings have been happened, and people have been notified. What happens behind the scenes now? Are the lawyers now, if you will, moving into a clean room? Would that be the next thing that they're doing?
I'm sure they're into their third or fourth clean room. Now they're talking with regulators, making sure everyone's cool with stuff. And since you got Captain Chaos and everyone, at least in the U.S. here, they're probably just getting ready for a fun ride to see what happens. It'll be good stuff. But I think I think we've all been in companies that have been acquired, but I think as an individual employee has nothing to do with anything related to the actual shenanigans and processes, this might be one of the best times in the whole cycle, because you basically have this sort of like far out horizon where it really is business as usual, and just sort of like nothing is going to change up or down. That nothing can really happen. So it's kind of it's nice. You can just go about doing your work.
Well, maybe also too, whatever. It's sort of like anything is still possible, right? Because it's just been announced.
Sure.
And obviously, I guess the two are coming together, but I guess exactly how it will be. I think probably the question I've heard most, or the speculation I've heard the most is around going forward. Is it like, will Wiz continue to be, if you will, multi-cloud, let's call it, right? Support multiple things. Or will it, just become like a security product just for Google? And then, of course, there's like, no matter how that question is answered, like, doesn't matter what anyone says, people then sort of like go off on their own conspiracy theory. Well, actually, and and then they're like, all of a sudden, like you're in like a Severance like movie. They're like, well, turns out they're going to put lions in the product. And you're like, well, I don't think that's going to happen, but anything can happen. So I think that is, and of course, too, I think there's probably some valid, if you will, worry from all customers, because probably everybody's been at a place where a company said one thing, did another, or something else changes, and really maybe it just is all back to our status quo discussion. At the end, we all like the status quo. We know the status quo is changing. That upsets us. So that seems to be, I think that will be the most of the online chatter for the next few months. It's like, what does Wiz do with all its other capabilities?
I think the most important thing is that maybe a year from now, we can have an episode where we ask Matt Ray, is the Google tool chain really awesome? We keep hearing about how it's fantastic and it's great. What's going on inside there?
Yeah, and if we're lucky, I would like to be invited for a luxurious meal at one of the Google cafeterias, and then I would like Matt Ray to explain.
They're nice.
Whether or not the tool chain is as great as we've speculated about many times.
So I've been to the Google cafeteria, at least the one here in Sydney, and it was very nice. Very very good meal. So the folks I've worked with previously at Google were part of GCP, the cloud team, and so I think that they are slightly separate from the rest of the Borg, Hive Mind, Access to All the Best Tools group.
Oh,
I could be wrong. This was years and years ago where they were still in scrappy startup mode. But I we'll see what how it all turns out. Definitely finally going to be a Googler, I guess.
yeah.
Well, congratulations, Matt.
If you stay there long enough, eventually, you're just going to be like, JavaScript optimizer 43. Just spend a lot of time.
And Matt, we should, before we close out this topic, we should give your final stats. What are they? 3 for 4, right? Like 3 of your past 4 companies have been acquired, right?
Yep.
And you were saying you were at Wiz 8 months, right? Which is a little bit more. You added a little bit more than $1 billion. A little bit more of $1 billion per month of market capitalization. So I feel like when you put in your annual review, that's what you should put in there. Added $8 billion of market capitalization to company. The end, right?
It could be me or the other 1,000 employees that have been added.
Hard to know. We'd have to run a lot of A/B tests, but for the moment, we think you did all of it. I think that seems like the only logical conclusion to bring to this.
Yeah, we'll never know otherwise until quantum computing is available.
Listen, it's no different than like Intel appointed a new CEO this week, and it went up $20 billion, and they're always like, "Well, that was because of him." So it's like, hey, it's the same thing, Matt. It's the same thing. You're one person, he's one person, same effect. I think it's all the same.
And we've had this podcast a little over 10 years. Just imagine the valuation it has for all the time Matt has.
Yeah. How do we get some of that to accrue to this? Matt, we need you more time on the podcast. Don't stop working so much on Wiz.
Okay. I'll see what I can do.
Well, following I think we've talked about coding and vibe coding and AIs a few times in recent episodes. And I don't know if I've technically been vibe coding, but I thought I should relearn programming because I keep telling these people like these things I want to implement with our AI stuff to play my little ridiculous D&D things. And I'm not sure. I don't know. It's difficult to get people to code for me. My Tom Sawyer skills are bad. So I thought, hey, I have Claude, and I've got all these people who have recorded things like teaching you how to do like Java and Spring Boot and stuff. I should just do that, and then it'll also make doing my job better because I could go talk about that instead of like platform engineering or whatever bullshit, and it might be a little interesting. So, the report so far is that it works really well. That's my assessment. You hook up.
Coté, this has been a topic of multiple conversations. So describe your environment. How are you vibe coding? What are you actually using?
So what I have IntelliJ because that's what all the people I work with use. So I figured I would do that. And then I have Claude here, and then Claude I'll use it and I'll like run out of stuff because it's Claude, like it's not unlimited. But then I have ChatGPT, and you can do that thing where you hook it up. You like make it look at IntelliJ, and it can go in there and edit stuff and do things. It's pretty amazing. Now, I haven't gotten to the advanced thing of just like, I don't know. They've got some AI thing in IntelliJ that I have a 7-day license for, but I don't know. I went to the chat window once and asked it a question, and it said I don't have access to something, and so I was out. And just like, that's the whole point of this. So maybe it's working in the background, and I don't know. But so far, I talked to Claude and ChatGPT. And I tried to use this like Claude coder thing that's got some cool ANSI art in a terminal thing, but I was just like, whoa, I don't know what's happening here. This seems a little crazy, so I stopped using that.
Now, would you say I don't know IntelliJ as well? So like, is it agent based in the sense of like, can it like add files? Can it delete files? Can it make like big changes to the file and highlight it for you? Are you doing that agent based kind of like Cursor, or are you just mostly relegated to just the chat window and kind of cut and paste between the two?
Well, mostly the cut and paste between the two. But if you hook your ChatGPT desktop up to IntelliJ, it'll actually go in there and make changes for you. And
I'm gonna say, if I could go so far here, I'm gonna leave. I don't think you're a vibe coder yet. I think
No,
that's
not
a
yet.
little.
Okay.
You're kind of like if you will, you're a legacy AI coder, right? You're
Oh,
kind
got
of
it. Got it. Okay.
you
Good.
haven't entered the
Legacy.
world of vibe coding. Is, hey man, you're in an IDE. You're barely driving, right? You're giving ideas, and this thing is just going to town. It's adding files, it's deleting files, it's running commands, it's checking things, or not checking things. It's doing GitHub pull requests, and all of that. So I think you have another level of vibe coding to get to. I think that's going to be your homework assignment.
I'm basically a half-assed vibe coder. I've got to put more effort.
You are.
Into
you're doing a little too much work in your vibe coding. You need you need to be a little bit more hands off in your vibe coding.
Yeah. So I feel like maybe the Claude Coder thing would do that. Like I could go to the command line and I could be like, write me an application that whatever. And I think that's what it does. But I got to work on this. I got to put some more effort in to make it effortless.
That's command line, Coté. That's already too much effort. Like I need you in a GUI. I need you in some type of VS Code fork. I need you barely touching it, and I need the stuff just happening on the screen. That's the. And I wanted to make a few updates from last time we talked about this. So I've been talking about Cursor. We had a long discussion about we're unsure how much of this is a mode. Many people wrote in to tell us that one, GitHub Copilot does have in beta, and I think it's maybe even released now, the agent mode that is very similar to Cursor. Also, Windsurf was reported as to be another very good, if you will, competitor to Cursor. And it seems like in general, all of the IDEs, and I don't know, maybe IntelliJ's there as well, are doing kind of this agent-based side. So I think it was collectively kind of written into, multiple people reached out to me to tell me that. It's like, yeah. And in fact, there's a whole, someone wrote an entire blog post about this, that if you will, AI IDEs don't really have any moats. So I think, Matt, you and I talked about that, and it seems to be like, not only are there no moats, it seems like everything has this capability. So Cursor at 10 billion, again, maybe you need to hire Matt Ray, make that acquisition happen quick. I don't know exactly what you're going to do. While I love that product, again, I would think we would double down on our concern for that evaluation going forward.
Yeah. So I've decided that I want to get on the vibe coder bandwagon, Brandon. And if I wanted to get started, is it, I just go download Windsurf or Cursor AI and I'm good to go? Do I need to pay for an LLM, subscription as well? What does that look like to somebody? And let's say like my goal is to show up and code up an application in Rust. I've never done Rust, right? So I just want to say like, okay, let's do this thing. And what does that look like, Brandon?
I would say my preference is Cursor, just because I like that one. But I think any of the ones you mentioned, it seems
so download Cursor.
Download that. I think you start it up, and I think you can start as easy as like, I want to build. I mean, really, you can even start like, forget about the language. You can say that it just says like, I want to build a web app game that allows people to pick 3 colors, and I want it to be written in Rust. And then off you go. Then from there on out, you're just answering questions for the most part about like how to do it, what to do. You probably want to make some decisions on how to run it. I think, right, in my little, if you will, best practices to always start with like, hey, write me a Docker file that includes all of the stuff I need to run this, and then run it in that container. Because that's the biggest part. It's like later on, after you've kind of vibe coded and maybe you forgot how to do it, you can always be like, oh, I have that little Docker file that I have a command I can run, and it'll start up my game or whatever application it is that you want to build. So I think that's what I would do.
And so the Cursor, I'm looking here at the Pro plan, unlimited completions, 500 fast premium completions, unlimited. Yeah,
so start. They all basically have a free tier, and I think you just use that. And then I've done the month to month on them just to play around with them. I don't know. I haven't done GitHub, so maybe that's even the one to try, because it seems obviously GitHub.
I do.
For lots of reasons.
I've already got a GitHub one.
Yeah,
but,
so maybe that's the place to go. But like I did upgrade for a month because then you can just, I mean, there is some limit, but like I can't think of enough ideas to ask it to do enough to like, I have not exhausted the limit. I'm sort of like, I can
Okay.
just, be in there and do
but
it. So
do you have to have an like a ChatGPT
now
subscription also?
it will all like, it will basically do all of that for you behind the scenes. At least in the case of Cursor, it does everything. And then it tells you like, okay, you're out of, if you will, the quote unquote, good models, right? And you can always just fall back to the smaller models. That
Right.
And for many of us, certainly those new to vibe coding, that may be enough, right? You don't even necessarily need enough, but for those that want maybe more advanced stuff, you can then decide to pay your 19 or 20. And I think that was another thing people pointed out. Windsurf, I think, is $5 a month cheaper. So if price is your issue,
No,
price,
not at
Windsurf
$20 a month. Yeah.
I think Windsurf is 15 a month and Cursor's 20. This is month to month. I think they
So
both
they're already
get
racing
discounts.
to the bottom.
I think they've already raced to the bottom.
You're
'cause I
not
think
getting the 10 billion. I'm
Copilot
sorry.
is mostly free. I guess I shouldn't look that up. I think there are lots of ways to get Copilot, but yeah, it feels like, I don't know. You're going to have an incredible, I don't know what you would do to prevent this from being completely commoditized.
I'm just wondering where the intersection with like the $100 a month ChatGPT lives. So with Cursor, I mean, do you get to pick your LLM? Do you get to say,
There's a drop down in your thing. There's
how
four
do you
of
know
them
which
all
one's
sitting
the
there.
best?
What's that?
How do you know which one's the best?
Well, I don't. This is part of it. And vibe coding. There's no best. There's just
vibe
next.
coding needs
There's
to
no best.
intersect
There's
with
just
the
next. You
default
just
life.
ask a question. If you don't
Yeah.
like that answer or gets it wrong, you ask it again or you switch models. That's
what
all
I'm
there is
hearing,
to it.
What I'm hearing is vibe coding is very outcomes focused and oriented, right? Would you
There
get
you
the
go,
outcome that
Coté.
you want? Don't
Absolutely.
worry how you got there. Outcome focused.
100%. If it doesn't, just ask a different. I've done that many times. You're like, in fact, there was a funny, funny enough, there was an article this week that I guess Cursor, they had the agent come back and it told the vibe coder to write his own damn code. I don't know. I'm just reading what was in the press, so I don't know. That this story feels so perfect. It almost has to be made up, so we should be very skeptical of it. But nonetheless, of the LLMs like deciding to tell you to write your own damn code does seem like given the tens of thousands of people are using it, it would not surprise me if one of the chats kind of went sideways. So but in that case, you would just switch. You would just be like, I'm out. I'm done with you. I don't know. I don't want to pick any. I'm done with that LLM. I'm switching over to another one. That's how you would fix that problem.
Yeah. I can also see. I've asked several times. It's the ChatGPT thing is $200 a month,
Right.
and I could see where someone would like if they were doing this for like 5 or more hours a day, they would sort of like run out. They would need more capacity with the higher end models, right? Like even me using now that I'm back on the Plus plan from my month of being a pro, I end up running out of the what is it 4.5 whatever the kind of highest level thing is. I'll run out of that quota for a while, and I think I ran out of it the other day, and it was like you have 5 more prompts until March 23rd, and I had to look at it several times and be like, whoa, March 23rd. So I guess it's rated on a monthly thing. But yeah, if you are sitting here like in Brandon's ideal world, just kind of like your feet up on the desk and just kind of like talking into a microphone, being like, no, I don't want that. Let's redo that. In fact, I don't want to play a game. Let's make a futuristic spreadsheet.
Let's do instant messaging. I've given up on my game.
That's right, exactly. So I can see that you would need unlimited access to this stuff. It would be.
I do think a lot of talk in the Slack this week about like, well, like, can you vibe code your way to production? It's a good question. Like the bigger the application and just like the more production worthy. I mean, open question whether or not you can get there. But I do think the part that I think, and the reason maybe hopefully this, all of us, but certainly the up and coming generation, just having enough experience to be like, I've been given a table or of 10,000 entries, right? Or like a spreadsheet of 10,000 entries. Just to know that like there's the capability to like ask something to like create a little Python to like parse that out and like do some basic transformation stuff is like, if more of the world just knew that, right? Just like, I'm talking about just regular office workers, right? Just regular people were like, wait a minute, I don't have to sit down. Cause I'm amazed how many times I see some people outside of IT and again, where they just manually are like editing something like a long, and it's like, you know, you almost want to like just jump into them and be like, no, there's a better way to do it. So I do think, if you will, that would be a good thing, that people knew this existed, and before they spent 3 days editing a crazy list of text, that they could do it themselves in some type of vibe code way. That would be a win for humanity. So that's my very pro vibe code take.
Yeah. I'm formulating a new theory that's not interesting or novel, is that maybe the more that, like, at least in the tech and the managerial world, let's say the managerial world, like, the more you talk about AI stuff, probably the less you actually use it, because you're just sort of like making up things. Whereas once you actually use something, it's great, but then you're just sort of like go about your job, instead of coming up with all sorts of weird applications for it, which is I don't know. We'll see how that pans out. But I have a question. Maybe this question for you, Brandon, is one of those things that belies my naivete, my legacy AI coder,
vibe coder,
like
legacy
attitude.
AI vibe coder.
But now you're saying it, like, it'll ask you some questions. Does it establish like what you want and remember that? Like, will it be like, hey, before I start coding for you, what languages do you like? Do you like JSON, or do you like Markdown? What do you want me to do here? And does it kind of build up this profile of you that it then like builds on, or is it like fresh and new every time?
No, the agent ones, that's why it's cool, right? The agent ones will like they'll basically, if you will, this is the part where it's a little bit, I don't know how the prompts are working, but they basically, if you will, load up the whole, let's just say they read in all the files. And if you had a previous, chat, or in this case, a previous kind of composed conversation in Cursor, it will, if you will, consume all of that. So it has all of that context.
Okay.
Anytime
so
you come back,
learn your style.
Yeah. Well, anytime coming back, it can kind of consume of like, okay, I assume this is what it does. It reads everything in again, right? And it's like, okay, and it picks up wherever you were last time. So if you go down the path of wanting to talk about the technology, it will clearly start to like ask questions, or, maybe you'll talk about that. But you can also completely, and if you're above that level, it'll kind of figure that out for you, right? If you just said, I want to build a web app, right? It would probably do some type of like, JavaScript or TypeScript or whatever. It would probably just go that route, unless you told it like, I want it to be in this. So then in your case, right, I assume your prompts would be something like, build me a Spring application doing XYZ. And then maybe you would give some more parameters about like the technology you're interested in. And for sure,
that's right.
That.
Yeah. And then the only, this might be where, this kind of system would work out better. Like the main problem that I've encountered is, of course, like if there's some newer thing within the past 2 months, like it doesn't know about it. It's very bad, right? And so like for example, Claude has this model context protocol thing, and all I'm trying to do is make these little tools that you hook into the Claude desktop thing, just to do stuff like tell me which way the goblin runs. That's all I want to know. But like because all of that is like relatively new, like it's kind of hilarious that you can actually go into Claude and ask it to help you with its specification, and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so like now if there was I don't even know what I would feed it to like learn about that. I guess I could go find a whole bunch of examples and just feed it into it. I don't know. But
Coté, I have an idea for you. I think this is how we can get you on stage at your next conference. It's something you probably definitely don't want to do. I can't remember your coworker Josh, right?
That's right.
He live codes an application in Spring. Is it like a book application? What is the application that he builds?
He uses Spring Boot all the time.
I know, but he builds something in front of like.
Nowadays he builds a pet adoption.
Okay,
clinic.
So what we should do is we should have you and Josh on stage, right? And it can't be pet adoption if that's what he's done before. We should give you both the application simultaneously. Be like, okay, I want you to build I don't know what would be a good example. What would be something like, I want you to build an application that uploads CSVs and prints out tables, something along those lines, right?
Oof.
And we should give you
Scintillating.
cursor. We should give you cursor or your preferred IntelliJ with all the, and we should have you vibe code it into the world. And we should give, I think Josh, he just gets the text editor. That's it. He gets only a text editor. And he gets he has access to no documentation. I don't know if he's an Emacs person or a VI, but that's what I'm talking about. Like straight up. In fact, we don't even give him syntax highlighting. He has.
Come on.
No, I think this is it. I mean,
No.
Listen, there's a division here. If you're going to be hardcore about it, you're getting a text editor. Don't make me go get the Oxide people out here, right? You know, Brian Cantrell, no syntax highlighting, right? He doesn't use it. So that's the level of person I'm putting this vibe coding against. We got Josh, just a text editor, right? And the absolute minimal runtime. And then we got Coté, internet, any of the vibe coding tools. And we just say like, okay, how long does it take for each of you to produce the thing? And then at the end, we can rate the actual application, like whose was better. I think that to me should be, I mean, I don't want to go too far. Could that be the VMware keynote this year? I don't know. I'll let everyone else decide. Maybe that's a place to start, right? After the Tanzu pitch, vibe coding versus old school coding. I think that'd be fantastic.
But that's even too hardcore for old school. And in the interest of fitting this in like a 30-minute talk slot, you're making it too hard. So I think what you do is you let your old school developer, let them have documentation, IDE highlighting. That's not that big a deal, but it can even be something that they're familiar with, like, go do me a not a pet adoption,
I disagree.
Car rental, and let them just watch them type, and then Coté sits over there and he mumbles into a microphone, let's do it in TypeScript. And it just goes off and it does its thing.
That would be great. That would be fantastic.
Right? And maybe you guys could play test this thing as like a live stream or something, and that way it can be edited down when it takes 5 hours.
But, we could have screen by screen. That would be
great.
And we can just see what's happening and I don't even, and then we need to have a series of challenges, kind of 3 phases: initial creation.
And this is a web series. Yes.
Add a new feature, and then maybe I don't know, GDPR compliance.
No, here you go.
Loving it.
Like episode 5, you just dropped the bombshell. First thing. Now let's change languages.
Oh yeah.
and so your Spring Boot guy's like, what? And you're like, just do it in C#. It's almost the same.
And then we could have another episode that's just called I got air gapped. And then I'll hear the challenge and I'll just be like, I'm out.
I'm done. I'm out. Mic drop. I like it. I think it'll be good. I really do. I don't think Josh, certainly for Spring, I think Josh is the documentation for Spring. So I think he'd be fine. He'd be fine without it. So.
Well, but it shows how like a developer, a 10x developer 5 years ago works, right? They're going to have IDE, highlighting. They're going to have all this stuff, but Coté, no offense, doesn't know what he's doing, and he just shows up and says like, "Hey, code me something, get to it," right? Like and the LLM's like, that'll be 10 more tokens, please. Right?
Well, I don't know.
All right, I've got another format thing. I think instead of it just being Josh and I every episode, I think maybe I am the constant, and we have a different person coming through with a different challenge, right? So we'll get. I mean, if Brian doesn't like syntax highlighting, we'll be like, okay, episode 3, we're gonna make a private cloud, and we'll just we'll just start from scratch and see what we can do.
No, I love that. Actually, I like, each week like you find another guest, but a guest that's willing to take on more and more challenges, right? And then when people are like, no, I don't want syntax highlighting. I don't want, and maybe we just get to a point someone's like literally writing raw assembly code. Like how low can the last person's like, I'm actually gonna build the chip in front of you, which I will, like how low level can it get?
Coté's AI Thunderdome. Every week he takes on a different language challenger. Where first week Spring Boot, next week Russ, next week, go. Next week. And,
Totally.
and every time Cote's like, I don't know that. Let's go. And he just,
We'll get our we've got a small DHH update. Apparently they canceled the chef contract and they're using something called Sync or something. But what if instead we're like, okay, we're gonna do some cameras of you driving up in your fancy car, and let's just say you're gonna pull a what do they call this Kubernetes thing? You're gonna pull that.
MERS?
You can't.
Yeah.
You're gonna pull them. You're gonna make your own configuration management tool from scratch. That's what we're doing this episode.
or you just drop the bombshell. We're gonna write Ruby on Rails from scratch. Let's go.
That would be great too.
Yeah, I think maybe this is one of the first software-defined talk reality TV shows.
I'm here for it.
First of many.
We could finally use, when you upload an episode to podcast things, you can say which season it's in. We could finally use the season tags, which would be nice.
The Rust season, the Ruby season.
I think this could, and then you could even expand into other things, not just coding. You could just say like, let's make a podcast, something like that. See, so I saw someone using a tool today. I haven't checked this out, called Napkin. And it'll go from text to slides, and of course the slides they don't look great, but sure. I think the magic of them is that it can generate 5 to 500 slides, so you can just sort of like flip through it and be like, yep, that's how I want to represent it. It's chevrons again, or we're on a cycle with an arrow that exits out the cycle. What variation of triangles can we use? But it was pretty nice. Now, my question was, can you go the other direction? Because I think that would be amazing if you could take slides and then generate text from that. You probably could, but I don't know if we have the technology for it yet. But definitely this idea. See, that would be a whole other thing. Is like let's make a TED Talk, and we would TED Vibe or whatever, and just sort of have the AI kind of come up with a presentation, a speech for it, and then we'd have someone actually do it, and then have some judges. Maybe we'll get some TED person. So not TED, it would have to be TEDx. I think that's where all the interesting stuff happens. But the other question is, now I didn't do this categorization very well. We had a big discussion about legacy software over in the Software Defined Talk Slack, which is available if you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com, and the number for this episode is 511, which is a type of pants that Levi's makes. I think those have a zipper, of course, and I think they're a little skinnier. And nowadays they might have kind of like the elastic sort of stretchiness to them, if I remember.
No, thank you.
I think the 511s are pretty good. They're not quite the relaxed old style thing. They're just a little more stylish. But anyways, if you wanted to join our Slack, you could go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/511 and go read about this legacy stuff. But now, since you are the full ass vibe coder, Brandon, like, can you vibe code your way around legacy? How would it apply if you had a big hunk of legacy software in front of you?
Well, I think it starts with, it's an interesting thread in general. It started by Michael Neal, longtime listener. He kind of posed the question in Slack, and it started with like something that kind of probably makes us all feel a little bit older. He kind of says, if you think about software developed, 20 years ago, right now, that's 2005. So maybe when some of us got into the game of software, think about around 2000, right? And you think about software written in like 1985, right? That's sort of the same distance, right, in time. So think about that for a second, and probably makes you feel old. But he kind of posed the question, like, so what does it really mean when someone says like legacy software? So it's all software, and you can start with maybe the simplest is it really just like an age thing? And I sort of, and this is where I think the conversation got interesting, is like, I don't feel the same about like, and maybe this is just showing my own age, like something written in like 2005 now doesn't seem as like, if you will, legacy as something written in 85 in year 2000, right? And the reason I guess I kind of feel like this is, and again, maybe this is experience, is like I still feel like the technology that we use today is still at least distantly related to the stuff in 2005. Whereas I think so many things happened between like, let's say the 1980s and 2000 that it feels like that technology stack is essentially foreign. It's like COBOL and it was mainframes.
It's not on the
mini
internet.
Computers. Go ahead, Matt.
Just nothing, pre 2000-ish is even on the internet. So that's what the difference is, right? You had the birth of open source. You had people starting to share things. You had things being published online where you could access them. I mean, a lot of this stuff, prior to, I guess, 2005-ish, it physically was shipped and doesn't exist online. That's what makes it so inaccessible. I mean, today, like, I can go and get VMs of Windows 2000, right? Or, at least like 2008. So even if you have to deal with this, quote unquote, super legacy software, it's like, it still can be managed digitally, but like, good luck getting your hands on Windows 95.
I mean, so that kind of makes it interesting. So then it's sort of like, well, legacy really isn't necessarily about time, right? I think that's sort of something that we kind of like concluded in the Slack. It's more about, and then it was sort of interesting, like, what does it actually mean? So one thought is like, and I think Michael brought this up, like a lot of people say legacy, like pejoratively, oh, that's legacy software. But like he was making the point of like, well, it's actually kind of like means you've succeeded. Like you wrote software that has been providing value for a long period of time. Right. And that's otherwise, like, why would it still exist? So I think that's an interesting framing too. Like the fact that like, no, legacy can only exist if it's valuable. Otherwise it would have been relegated a long time ago. Right. And so that I think is an interesting idea. And then two, this kind of came up with some other people. And I think, I'll refer to as he goes by in Slack, Mad Viking God. There was a couple of people talking about, and Chris also talked about like just idea of like fear, right? Like the fact that like, if you're scared to change something, if the software sort of exists, even if it's relatively new, but it exists in this isolated area where no one feels like they can make a change without something potentially catastrophic happening, like you're kind of already in legacy mode, right? So you can say like, maybe it's only been written for 3 years, but like everyone's afraid to touch the, if you will, the web app, right? Written in PHP or maybe written in modern technologies, but it sort of does something important and no one's sure how it works. So like, maybe that's like an interesting idea. It's just, you can almost replace the word legacy with fear and value. So it's like, this system provides value, so much value, we're scared of it. We can't touch it. And therefore we're going to call it legacy and kind of no one's going to get near it, which is kind of a weird, like, I don't know. I just think that's a weird idea around software.
Well, there's a company that I've been kind of following called Mechanical Orchard. I think the founder is one of the guys who started Pivotal, like the old original Pivotal, Pivotal Labs. And they have what they call their 3 principles for how they tackle their business model is take existing legacy applications and modernize them, not migrate them, but literally replace them with a modern stack. And what their 3 principles are, the first thing is that the system that exists, this legacy system that's running and processing stuff, that's the specification. It doesn't matter how it was written. You just need to replicate its behavior verbatim. And we've seen stuff like this before. Like I briefly worked with one of the stock exchanges, and the way they rolled out upgrades was they reran the last 6 months of data on the upgrade platform. And as long as they got the exact same results out, they trusted it. Right. So it didn't matter what was in that stack as long as they got the same output. And so, the existing platform is the specification. And then if you can replicate the exact outputs with a modern language, a modern supportable platform, that is the magic. And they're mixing in a lot of AI, and I'm sure they're just vibe coding it, but they've got some blog posts that are definitely worth reading and checking out.
But I like the idea. I think inside of that though is like, why are they doing it? And I think I don't know. I'm just kind of been really thinking about this idea of fear. It's like you go into an organization and if they have something valuable, but they're scared to touch it, there is like almost some therapy that's taking place. It's like, we can't have this. We can't have you exist in a state of fear of your software. And so much that you're not touching it. You're not doing anything with it. Right. And it's like if you have those combinations, then it's like, call this company, right? Versus like, I don't know, that's just some weird Python script Matt Ray wrote, and who cares if it works or it doesn't, right? So it's like, I don't know. I think there's like an inherent, that fear part, I guess, is what drives, I guess, the reason to do it. What were you going to say, Coté?
Oh, well, I think this point you're making, that's what I joke about with legacy stuff is that it's software you have to change, but you're afraid to change, because otherwise it's like, you kind of indicated the category. Otherwise, you just call it your software. Like if you're not afraid of changing it, it's just that's what it is. Now, there is that you did bring up another category that I don't think of very often, which is like, that's weird code over there I don't care about. So you don't really need to change it, and you don't really fear it. But you also don't call it your software. Yeah. I was, as you were talking, I was doing some early vibe coding with COBOL over here. I asked ChatGPT to make me a COBOL app that plays tic-tac-toe, and it gave some wonderful commentary. It said it says it's an exercise in pain and joy. But looking at the output that it has, fascinating language, this COBOL. But I think the other part, and I'm sure you build this around it, the other part that I think would become difficult in a legacy system is like all of the stuff aside from the code, like all the systems around it that you would have to do stuff with. Like I assume with COBOL stuff, there's like some batch job controllers somewhere that do things like whatever. Whatever you generated in COBOL, I think has to like run somewhere, and who the fuck knows what that is, right? And so like that's the other kind of stuff that I think also that makes legacy stuff really annoying is not only the code itself, but the entire system you've built around it to run it, which could be quite tedious and bizarre to deal with. But maybe I can try to run this Tic-Tac COBOL program. It even made a little visual thing of a board, but we'll see if that works. Well, speaking of things that we'll see, there's something that we always see, despite what people may want to see, and that is bureaucracy. Do we have any this episode, Brandon?
A couple things. One, just a quick plug for stickers. We have some people giving out stickers at DevOps Day Chicago. Appreciate Brett doing that. But if you would not there and you want a sticker, all you have to do is send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. I'm happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. Last week, the after show got a little bit more attention than usual. We debated the merits of daylight savings time once again, and the listeners wrote in with some of their own solutions. So I'll quickly go through them. Bruce suggests the best answer to the daylight savings conundrum, in his opinion, is to shift a half an hour right between the two and make everyone unhappy, which was sort of a branch of the Matt Ray. It was sort of like pick one and never change it, and then you just have half the people happy. But Bruce is going a step further. It's like if everyone's unhappy, we are uniform. And of course, being 30 minutes in between would be very, very funny. Go ahead, Matt. You want to say something?
No. My point was, as soon as you pick one, it becomes the majority. That's my platform. Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. Well, I like it. I don't know. Bruce, I like the creative thinking. I don't know if I like that solution. Now, Brian chimes in with a whole different solution. It's just basically everyone should just work off of UTC. But so then it's like, it's just the sun comes up when it comes up based on where you are in the world. So it's just like if it's whatever 1500 here, it's so that one's kind of a weird one in the sense like we're all on the same time, but we're all picking our own day hours, which is like an interesting idea. No. Again, but it'd be easy for software developers because then it's just like everyone has the same time zone. And then Mad Viking makes another appearance here. He just says everyone should go back to local time where time is based only on the nearest clock, which I guess is like medieval time. So whatever you can see, that's what it is. So if you put up a clock in your house, it's like, well, you are now your own time zone. So I appreciate all of the many suggestions. I don't think any of these will be adopted, but I like them. I thought they were all pretty funny. And there is in the nonsense part of the show links, you can actually go out and watch a very both accurate and funny description of time zones by a software developer and why you should basically never touch them. So watch that and be happy that you're not writing time zone software. So that's
maybe I like this idea of, well, there's two things here. One, if we all just switched over to UTC, I think we would have like maybe a multi-decade, if not a century long, sort of just like sit down and think about what time really is. and that might be valuable for humanity. It's just sort of like something interesting to think about. If we're just so used to time being
humanity
synced
has
up.
nothing better to do. Yes.
Now related to that is like maybe, you know, how I'm always complaining that we really only need like one, maybe two types of screws, but we got too many types of screws. I think maybe progress might have gone too far, and we need to like throw a break in the system by just allowing every city, even maybe every family, just to adopt whatever timekeeping thing they want, just to kind of like, you know, maybe we've optimized too much and we need to slow things down. So those are some possible breaks that we can put on the system. Now, something you don't want to put a break on is exciting, thrilling conferences. And there are several of those. There's SRE Day London next week, March 27th and 28th. Also in the same town, same days, is the Red Monk EMEA conference, Monkey Gross. And then there's Cloud Foundry Day, May 14th in Palo Alto. There's NDC Oslo, where I'll be speaking. I need to buy a plane ticket for that. May 21st to 23rd. And then KubeCon is April 1st to 4th. And there's something else. I'm also going to be at SRE Day Cologne, as we would say, or Köln, as others would say. I think that's in June, one of the J months. You can figure it out. Speaking of J months, what do you have to recommend this episode, Matt Ray?
My G recommendation is Jeff Huntley's blog. He's a Australian, I guess he's a freelance developer, living in a van, traveling the country, and a lot of interesting reading there. But he kind of his blog post kind of kicked me into wanting to spend some time on the vibe coding thing, as he walked through like building up guardrails, specifications for Cursor on how it should behave. And so every time it does something he doesn't like, he has it write itself a new rule. And I was like, I want to try this. So that his blog is lots of good articles, lots of interest reading. That's my recommendation this week.
How about you, Brandon?
Well, I've got just kind of two recommendations. One, we didn't get to this topic this week, and so we won't make it, won't draw it out here. But I'll just say that anytime you see the New York Times write about accusations of corporate espionage between software, like, I'm all in. So I think everyone should read about Rippling, who accused the top competitor, Deel, D-E-L, of essentially, doing some type of spy. They basically inserted a spy into the company and we're getting stuff out of it. So, and of course, like, you're thinking to yourself, well, like, what is this? Defense software? Is this like really like cutting edge? No, this is HR software. So this is how competitive HR software companies are. So I don't know. I don't have anything to say about it other than I just think it's crazy. That's pretty crazy. And of course, I would say, to all the HR software I've ever used, I didn't really like it. So I don't think there's any reason anyone should be spying on anyone. I don't think anyone has any good ideas in HR software. And then finally, I'm trying to set a record for how many times can I recommend the same thing. So I'm going to do it again. So the Severance season finale probably will likely already aired by the time that you see this. So I'm going to say it was great. I have high expectations. I've been all into this show for months. The thing that makes this great, these puzzle box shows, even better now, is that there's like an endless amount of TikTok theories you could watch about like what's going to happen. So I can only imagine if this had existed, TikTok had existed during Lost, that would have been even more crazy. But I think Severance, I think second season's been great. I believe the finale is going to be great. If it isn't, I'll come back next week and I'll eat my words. But if you haven't watched any of it, you've got a whole season 2. It's going to be bingeable come Friday. You can watch the whole thing. And I'm believe, and I need it to end with a great episode. Otherwise, I will feel suckered again into getting involved in one of these TV shows. But I still believe, I have faith. So Severance season finale, check it out.
Well, I have two recommendations. The first one is somewhat self-serving. I was on a another podcast that the ITQ company here in the Netherlands does, called "When Shit Hits the Fan," and it was published on Monday, so you can go check that out. We'll have a link to it in the show notes,
Yeah.
and everything else at softwaredefinedtalk.com/511. And I think that they have two tricks or gimmicky, formats in their show. They ask a bunch of quick questions, and then they ask you to tell them when you really mess something up, when you fan shit or fan chat, as it were. And then also, listen, I don't know how to pronounce most things, let alone the names of dead French academics. But over the course of my life, I've heard a lot about this guy, Barthes. In English, we would say Barthes, Barthes, who seems to have been one of the major people who established the whole, like, what's really being said here, the symbolic nature of things, like the reading between the lines. And there's, as the book is called, a very short introduction that I've read about half of. Now I need to read the rest. But it's a pretty good overview of like what this guy's deal was with semiotics and symbolism and all sorts of stuff like that. And this is a fun example of, it's actually nice to have one of the AI things read with you, because you can just take a picture of the page, as I've done many times, and be like, explain this to me. Tell me what's going on here. And I have to say, its explanations are often much better than what was on the page. So good job, AI. I think this book was written in 1982, though. So maybe didn't have AI back then to help out. Well, thankfully, you do have AI now. If you wanted to go back and summarize this episode and pick out the good parts, it would probably have to expand it into a full 2 hours to capture the exquisite, perfectly done like version that we did in talking through this. But it would be maybe a little clearer if you had the time to give it. But this has been another episode of Software Defined Talk. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/511. You can join our Slack channel, subscribe to it. Look at our other podcast, Software Defined Interviews. We'll have another episode coming out this week. Every 2 weeks, we interview someone. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Great as always. Before we go, I want to ask one piece of advice, and I think both of you are professional presenters. So I have to record a short presentation, and my question is simply this: is like, which is better, the voiceover, just straight voice over the slides, or should I do the talking head, like where you're the talking head in the corner of that? Which, I mean, I'll start with you, Coté. Maybe you've done more of these. Which do you think is more effective?
That's a tough question. I'm going to give you two answers. One, I don't really like the floating head. So I also don't like the no head, but because, but my dislike of the floating head is so strong that I would say just not that. Whatever. Now, whenever I do these, sometimes I have to have a floating head. But what I like to do is I like to do a little bit of editing and cut between full head and slide. Right.
Okay.
And that's if I'm in control, that's what I like to do.
So, okay, Matt,
now maybe another option, if you have a green screen, I think Brandon walking onto the slide and standing there and presenting, that would be awesome.
That would be okay. Matt, what is your when you have to do these types of things, what do you prefer?
Just voiceover. Nobody needs to see you talking. That's
okay. Interesting. Because
I'm
the
old school.
voiceover,
Yeah.
I have to say though, I did straight voiceover, and I think it came out well. I think it's just easier because you don't have to, like, you're just listening, right? But then I was like, this is kind of boring because it's just like you're just listening. Yeah. And then I was like, I should do the floating head. But then I was like, I don't know, man. I found it very distracting. Now, of course, the caveat is when you're the floating head, it's very hard not to be self-critical or just get like more obsessed with the appearance. Whereas like when I'm watching someone else's floating head presentation, I don't even doesn't even bother me. Like I don't think about like what they'll look like. It doesn't. So I don't know. I always try to, but like when I watched my own floating head, I was like, I don't like this. This is not good. So I don't know. I submitted mine without the floating head, but I'm wondering if, I don't know. We'll see what the people, of course, no one really, you should never let these decisions be left to the person, because then it's just like you're figuring it out.
I think
So,
next
we'll
time
see.
next time you do full on like weatherman thing with some Pee Wee Herman vibes, where like there's some chart and maybe like you squat down and then you do the thing where like you flip through the air and you land on top of the chart.
Yeah. Well, once again, I've learned the same lesson I've learned every single time. Every time, it's not officially a teleprompter, but when you've done all the work, you've scripted out your slides, and you can read them verbatim. It's always like, I don't think this is as good as me just talking like regular. You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't know what else you can do when you're just by yourself. It feels like you should you have to prepare. You have to write something out. It feels like you're doing better work, but the output is not as good. It's like I don't know. It's a weird. Almost you just invite one of you on and be like, well, we're not doing a podcast today, but I'm just going to have this person sit here and we're going to talk through this. So I don't know. Maybe that would be more effective. I don't know.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, listen, I would normally thank everyone in the chat, but for some reason I got logged out. I don't know what Restream is doing. So I did see some people earlier. I don't know. Michael was in there. Brett was in there. Some other people were in there. So I used them as fun callers. Thank you for playing along and the all hands. We will record next week, likely around this time. And until then, take care.
Bye.